Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. I just started the recording. Shh, don't tell anyone. I'm recording for my own purposes, for posterity. Hi, it's Michael Johnson.tv here with you today on the 17th of September. We are live. It is around 11:15 a.m. Eastern time. How do I move this thing around? I'm going to play on the whiteboard today, talking about accountability without judgment. And this is a concept I've been thinking about a lot, working with, working through with support from a therapist, and wanted to share a few thoughts with you on that here. And it relates to delivering anything, doing any projects, working with others, making promises to others and keeping those promises and working together and moving things forward. And I wanted to dive a little bit first. Well, first of all, no guarantees, no refunds. If you don't like what you hear, change the channel. That's just my own personal disclaimer, hashtag disclaimer for the session here today. And I was inspired by a few things that I will zoom out here and write down here. Let me just talk about the inspirations for this. Inspirations for this session today are specifically some poems by David White. David White. And I sort of say that as I try to express an Irish accent. Specifically, Confessions. I think it's called ordinary words that are like poems written around ordinary words. And it's so comforting, amazing to hear his voice also on the Waking Up app. There are live recordings of David White reading poems that are about specific words and words like courage, denial, beginning. And he just spins a tale around those words, and I just find it magical. So I was inspired by David White's poems and readings of those poems, and I may read some a bit later, another time perhaps. But I've been, well, to be honest, struggling really with accountability and judgment in the context of, well, life, but specifically, let's say the workplace, and making promises to others that you will deliver certain things that are expected of you by certain times so that projects can move ahead and other colleagues can take that work and continue it. And often I get stuck in, let's say fear of judgment. So these are some of the themes, sort of like, fear of judgment, leading to procrastination. You don't do something because you're scared that somebody's going to judge it when they look at it later. So you don't even start, even though you may have promised, yeah, I'll get that thing to you, by the end of the day or by the end of the week. Then there you are at Friday at 4:42 p.m. And whether you send it in or not, it's not going to make much difference because everybody's gone home for the weekend. But still, right, you made a promise to deliver something by a certain time, but you've mired yourself in that procrastination. I'm just so worried, so scared. Fear of judgment leading to procrastination. So I want to just play on this theme a little bit, and I have a few special memories of lately working on a project recently where I was having fun with this. I was having fun with accountability, and I would say tell my colleagues, you'll have a video by 4:12 p.m. I would tell my colleagues. Why the hell 4:12 p.m.? Well, 4:12 p.m. is because it's just too easy to say, yep, 4 p.m. on the dot. Somehow there's something interesting and funny and special that kind of tweaks your brain a little bit when you say something on off hours, off minutes like that, especially also when you're with a group of people and you need to leave. Perhaps, oh yeah, I got to leave at 4. Well, 4 turns into 4:05, 4:07, 4:12. Yeah, it's like you just keep there, like, oh, yeah, I got to leave, but I don't want to bother, I don't want to disturb, but I got to leave. If you make it like kind of weirdly off kilter a little bit, like I got to leave exactly at 4:12, then it's like, boom, 4:12, you get up, you leave. And so this worked for me recently on a project, and also, making this deliverable, right? The deliverable. That's another word to tease apart a little bit today. The deliverable. I'm going to deliver something by a certain date. That's a sort of a promise. What's the type of promise that you would make to a colleague is that, I will deliver this piece of work X by this time Y. So, what comes up for me here is like things that I'd like to play with here is sort of like this fear of judgment a little bit, and what does accountability really mean? Ability to account for something. And really, what does judgment mean? So we're going to start by looking these things up in the dictionary. I do have a paper dictionary here, the Concise Oxford Dictionary, which is a couple inches thick, so it is concise relative to probably the original dictionary that's somewhere in a library in Oxford. But judgment. Let's just read the definition of judgment. Judgment, noun. 1. The critical faculty, discernment, good sense, an opinion or estimate, as in my judgment, dot, dot, dot. The sentence of a court of justice, a decision by a judge, often a misfortune viewed as a deserved recompense. It is in quotes, it is a judgment on you for getting up late. Criticism. Also the phrase against one's better judgment, contrary to what one really feels to be advisable. So it's so interesting that for me, when I think about judgment, I think about immediately like an eye for an eye, this sort of thing. Like it's, yeah, really, a hammer coming down, the judge's hammer comes down. This is what first comes to mind when I think of the word judgment, or the sort of the emperor of Rome in the movie Gladiator, perhaps, thumb up or down. That's a judgment. He's judging the performance, and it leads to either glory, perhaps short-lived, or death. So, this word here, death, immediately we've linked judgment to death. But as I was reading the definition of judgment, there's other things there. This is for me. What comes up for me here is when I think of judgment. So, but I was surprised, the definition, the first part of the definition of judgment is this, the critical faculty, being able to judge things, to discern things, to evaluate, to assess things. Gotta just erase that. I'm playing in Microsoft Whiteboard here, which is kind of fun actually. Well, discernment, critical faculty, discernment, opinion or estimate is a judgment. Making a judgment call, sort of saying with limited information, in my discernment, in my estimate, in my, based on my knowledge, my experience, my expertise, my sort of judgment call on that is XYZ. Like those are the first level definitions of that word before we really get into the sort of court of justice, the decision by a judge. This sort of maybe, I don't know, these are sort of more negative, sort of death related kind of things around judgment. But this sort of lifts me up thinking of judgment as this as these things right here. Then let's talk about this other word, accountability. We hear a lot about it in the workplace. These things like let's make a RACI chart. Who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for any sort of tasks as you go down a project. These are all the tasks, these are the people, and you make a matrix of who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed. This is a sort of typical workplace kind of thing, and it's interesting. Always the definitions I find are kind of fluid, kind of unknown, undefinable a little bit. So I'm going to take a moment here and go into the dictionary again around the word accountable, which doesn't have a very long definition because it's only part of the definition for account. So accountable, let me just say the definition here. Definition. The definition of accountable in the dictionary is actually responsible. And I find this fascinating because we spend a lot of time in the workplace teasing out the differences between who's responsible for something and who's accountable for that thing. And typically, the R here in responsible is who's doing the work, actually, who's doing the thing, and who is accountable to account for it being done. And these are typically two different people. This may be like the worker bee. Let's call this the, whoops, worker bee. And the accountable is a sort of like leader. So the leader is accountable that the worker bee gets the job done. But in the definition in the Oxford, right, accountable is responsible, required to account for one's conduct. Required to account for one's conduct. Sorry, my writing is really terrible here. And we'll maybe zoom out and move out a little bit. So again, it comes to this word here, required to account for one's conduct. So let's look up the word account. A narration or description, gave a long account of the ordeal. That's kind of like a story, a narration or description. That's a sort of an older word. I wouldn't use that word so much these days. An arrangement or facility at a bank or building society, especially for commercial or financial transactions, especially for depositing and withdrawing money. So that's the financial really definition. The assets credited by such an arrangement. An arrangement at a shop for buying goods on credit. I have an account at the grocery store and you put it on my tab, we would say maybe in the Canada or the US. Um, a record or statement of money or services received. The practice of accounting or reckoning. A statement of administration of money. The period during which transactions take place on a stock exchange. And then there's the next definition, number 6 here. So the first definition was about a story, an account of the ordeal, an account of the events. The rest of the definitions, 2, 3, 4, and 5, were really around money. Definition 6, counting, reckoning. Consider, regard as, account it as a misfortune, account him to be guilty, regarding something as in a certain category. Yeah, I'm not really sure here. Serve as or provide an explanation or reason for. Accounting for people's misbehavior. Yeah. Provide an explanation or reason for something. So accounting for something like, so let's say account. Here's the definition of account. Number 6. Account for. Account for. Yeah, you need to account for. Right, account for. Required to account for one's conduct. And the definition of account for is provide an explanation. provide an explanation or reason. So, immediately my mind goes here like an excuse. Like typically in the sort of transformational leadership training world where I've spent some time, we would call that just like those are just bullshit excuses. Like accounting for one's conduct. Oh yeah, I didn't get up, I got up late. Sorry, it took longer than I thought it would. Yeah. Providing an explanation or reason. What else? Number two, give a reckoning of or answer for. Answer for. Let's say that. Answer for. Answering for one's conduct. Is it like explaining why? The next one is succeed in killing, destroying, disposing of, or defeating. Supply or make up a specified amount or proportion of. Wow. Then it's a lot about money, more on money. So accounting for. Yeah, accountability, responsible, required to account for one's conduct. Yeah, so the other thing that came up for me, let me just talk about me for a moment. This is definitions here. Provide an explanation, answer for. What comes up for me when I think of accountability? The ability to account, the ability to count up. It's kind of like measuring, to count up, to measure. So the accountability in this, let's say in this scenario is, did I deliver the video by 4:12 p.m., right? So did I deliver the agreed thing? We agree on the thing, X by Y, the thing, and the agreed upon time. And it seems simple. Deliver a certain thing by a certain time. But again, personally, I get stuck often in a procrastination loop, worrying about the thing, right? The thing. Let's talk about the thing. The thing. And this procrastination loop and where that judgment comes in. So really, we're talking about here is accounting for, providing an explanation, answering for, counting up, measuring the thing, assessing, was the thing delivered by the promised time? Where I go often is, okay, I've said I would deliver this thing X. Let's call it a video explanation. Instead of just getting down to doing the video explanation, my thoughts sort of drift into sort of like a vortex. Let's call this the procrastination vortex. Vortex of rumination and procrastination. So I've committed to say I'm going to deliver X by Y. Let's say Wednesday at 4:13 p.m. This is my commitment. Deliver X by Y. Then after I say that, often, it's like I either go here or go here, and this is like a slippery slope of procrastination vortex. Otherwise it can be like get into action, right? I mean, ultimately, what matters is the results on the ground, what you actually deliver. But I fall often into this procrastination vortex, which I highlighted a little bit up here, right, which is related to that fear of judgment. So again, right, let's just like tease that out a little bit. So there's a couple of paths here after making a commitment, and often I'm observing myself falling into this path here, this procrastination vortex. So that's filled up of like Questions. A lot of doubts, uncertainties, and questions. Questioning. For example, is X really the right thing? People won't like X. X is not anyway enough. So why does it matter? So, fuck it. Doesn't matter. What else is buried into that vortex of procrastination? What other kind of doubts and questions come up there? Yeah, really, is this really the right thing? I can do it later. It's easy. I'll do it later. When you're looking at X, you're looking at this thing that you've committed to deliver. You're like, meh, it's not such a big deal. I'll do it later. There's Marvin. Marvin, the inner critic, comes in and says, come on, it's so easy. It's not a problem. You can do it later. Go check your Twitter feed. Go check your Facebook. You don't need to start working on that quite yet. Come on. Click. Thanks. Thanks, Marvin. Thanks for the inner critic there. We don't need you today. We're exploring you. What else do you say, Marvin? Actually, Marvin, come back in. Come back in. Yeah, it's easy. I'll do it later. Go check your feed. Check your social media. Do it later. Anyway, it doesn't fucking matter. If you do it or not, it doesn't matter. So there we go. There's Marvin saying, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Other stuff. Nobody cares. No one's going to look at it anyway. So what does it matter if you do it or not? No one will read it or look at it anyways. What else, Marvin? What are the other doubts and questions that come up when you're stuck in this procrastination vortex after making a commitment to deliver X by a certain date? Those are some of the ones at the beginning, anyway. Then often maybe you get over that hump a little bit, come back into it, you know. Meanwhile, this is let's say that time is going along on this axis here. This is the time axis. From the time when you made the commitment here, right? Time is going forward. And if you get stuck in this vortex, stuck in the vortex, time still marches on, right? Time is marching on. Suddenly, oh, you pop out here, you wake up. You wake up from the vortex thanks to whatever method that is, and there's various ways to do that, you know, like get present, getting present to reality. I mean, there's various mindfulness, techniques, meditation, all this stuff can help pull out of the vortex, right? Once you've gone into this vortex, it's can be hard to come out. So at some point you got to just cut it and come back into action. Even though for me, like the whole concept of like action must be moving all the time is like, no, there's a mix. But personally, for me, I find it's often I'm on that side of the spectrum of lack of action and more introspection, thinking too much. So that's the initial doubts and questions. Is it really the right thing? What if they don't like it? And this is where it's not enough anyway. It'll never be good enough. Can never be good enough anyway. So what does it fucking matter if you deliver it or not? It'll never be good enough anyways, right? So, like, therefore, doesn't matter if you do it or not. There's that. It's kind of getting to the essence a little bit of that, of these, boiling it down a little bit. I'll do it later. In other words, like, it doesn't really matter. It's not that important. It's easy. I'll just do it later. It doesn't really matter. So there's two elements here. There's one, playing down, playing down, to downplay, play down. Right. That's one element to gather from here. That doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Playing it down, reducing the importance of that commitment, even though it may be important for those colleagues, for those friends, those other human beings to whom you have promised that you will deliver this thing. And that could just be you, right? Yeah, there's another element of the equation here is who to whom. I will deliver X by Y to Z. This is like who. It could be teammates, let's say. I will deliver X by Y to Z. So the vortex, the procrastination vortex leading to all these doubts, questioning, downplaying the importance, play down the importance. So this is again a way to wake up here, right? Get present. Also, remember the importance. Remind yourself of the importance to you and others. So often, I've experienced this pretty heavily. For example, I promised to deliver something by the end of the week, and then it was 5 p.m. and hadn't done it, and then quickly, rapidly did something, and managed to get over the fear of judgment again, which comes in here. Haven't really talked about that here, right? Doubts, questions. Is it really the right thing? What if it's not good enough? It can never be good enough. So this is really like where we're getting into the judgment, starting down this road of judgment, doubts, questions, leading to the vortex of procrastination. And often, let's say that, this is our time, again, is marching forward, and here's our delivery date. This is the date. Why? Wednesday, 4:13 p.m. We have promised to deliver this thing by then. So right away, once we wake up here, we've lost, this is the opportunity cost that we've lost by going down the vortex of procrastination, right? It could have been completed. We could have done it. We could have learned something. We could have done an iteration loop, a feedback loop to actually check, like, is X really the right thing? We lost the opportunity to do that. Maybe a first draft could have been done here and get feedback on it. There's all sorts of, right, a big opportunity cost here when you go down that road into the procrastination vortex, into all these questions and all these judgments. Again, judgment in the sense of the judge, not in the sense of good sense and good. What was the original definition there that we had of judgment? Discernment, critical faculty, having an opinion and an estimate of things. Well, we've lost the opportunity to do that here because we're stuck in the judgment, the death, judgment from the point of view of death. It's like, oh my goodness, it's awful, it's terrible, it's a dark place to be. So yeah, I mean, what matters is action, right? This leg matters, really. This leg matters. And it's also, I guess there's one other element that I want to talk about briefly is, you know, this this part of the commitment here, is it possible? Is it reasonable? Is it doable? Reasonable. Yeah. I remember doing a particular training, the gratitude training, and they talked about being unreasonable, making like unreasonable commitments, and then, stretching yourself. Is it stretchy? Is it going to stretch yourself to, you know, go beyond your sort of self-imposed limitations in terms of action, putting yourself in situations that you are scared of, drawing on courage, all that stuff. But, there's a whole decision here, the decision to say that, how reasoned is it? How much do you use your judgment here? Okay. I think we're on to something here. What I'm onto here is like use more judgment upstream. Cue the judgment upstream before making the commitment and, you know, get rid of the judgment downstream of the commitment. Yeah. So use the good side of that definition of judgment, your discernment, your ability to sort of estimate and say, yeah, this is good, this can be done. And also bring in some courage, some sort of stretchiness, you know, that, yeah, I'm gonna, and make it clear also the risk level, the uncertainty of the thing also. I don't know. Yeah. Never sure how much you can actually get done there. But maybe we can bring in courage upstream with the good side of judgment, our reasoning, our ability to sort of thumb in the air, hand waving, sort of estimate of this so that we can keep ourselves really, this using judgment, getting rid of judgment downstream, bringing it upstream and leading that into the action. Yeah. So all these questions like, oh, people won't like it. It's not good enough. It's easy. I'll do it later. Well, if it's easy, then you should bring the date back then. That's part of the judgment, is how long will it take? You know, asking these questions here, how long? How detailed does it need to be, right? So it's probably better to bring back all of these questions. Nobody cares. Well, if nobody cares, then why do it? Just don't do it. Just don't make that commitment. Like if nobody cares about it, I mean, if you care about it, then do it. If even if you think nobody else will care, but it's important to you, this could be just you. Might be the only person to whom you're making that commitment, and that's great, right? You can then manage all this because, people in this case, people is just you. Well, you can choose. I like it. I will like it. I know I'm going to like it. I'm going to give it a try. If I don't like it, I'll try something else. Nobody cares, right? Nobody cares. Well, in order to do that, ask upstream. Ask people, hey, I'm thinking of delivering this. Will this make a difference for you? I think this can make a difference for you. If they say no, it won't make a difference for me. Well, I still believe it could make a difference for you. Are you open to me delivering it to you? And seeing if it does make a difference for you. No one will read it anyways, right? No one. Again, this vortex here is all this language sort of anonymized. It's not enough. People won't like it. Nobody cares. No one will read it anyways. It's all sort of like easily anonymized. So that's another maybe way to make it a bit better here. I'm running out of colors here, but what I wanted to highlight is this idea of people, nobody, no one, So this is like personalize it. Make it about specific people. Personalize the commitment and the doubts and fears. Ask people that you're committing to deliver something, you know, does this matter for you? Can I get a commitment from you to read it? If I deliver this to you by Wednesday 4 p.m., can I hear back from you by Monday 5 p.m. on your experience of that? Ah, that's nice. So, bringing the judgment back upstream is the key that I'm taking away here. So, oh my God, I think I'm gonna stop now. Um, this was crazy? This was a new exploration, a new thing for me, actually. I just went live on Twitch, and I have no idea if anyone's listening, and I don't care. Well, do I care? I don't know. Again, it's about this personalize, no one, people won't like it, all that stuff. Like, it's so interesting. Really, really, really interesting. So, accountability without judgment. There were a few other things that I wanted to highlight here that are maybe ways out of these doubts and questions. So let's talk specifically about these. I said I was done, but I'm not quite done. And what time is it anyway? It's only 11:50. I got 5 more minutes before our creative work hour is coming to an end. So, you know, this part specifically. So make it like hashtag disclaimer. Like I said at the beginning of this stream, there's a disclaimer. If you don't like it, turn the channel. There's no guarantees, there's no refunds. Just make it clear this is a first draft. Hey, these are some thoughts. Hey, I'm going to deliver my thoughts on this XYZ issue. Some thoughts. Initial idea, first draft. Like this stream. I mean, I kind of got excited and committed to myself. I'm going to go online at 11:15 a.m. and here I am, 11:15 a.m. The clock ticked over and I went live. So that's like pat on the back also, right? Is recognizing yourself, right? Recognize, acknowledge, celebrate, even the smallest, commitments, acknowledge, celebrate, right? And necessarily we got to start, sorry, with small commitments, just like lifting weights. So this is let's highlight this, recognize, acknowledge, celebrate, and, assess also later on. So, yeah, a few other ideas of how to get out of the vortex of it'll never be good enough, it doesn't matter anyways. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed this. It's a total mess of a scribble, but it's quite magical. And I love this idea of the words. Again, let me come back to my inspirations here. David White. I want to just give a shout out to Sam Harris and the Waking Up app. There's some really magical and wonderful content in that, the Waking Up app, particularly the poems and readings by David White. David White. And also other series and meditations and various good stuff. So check out the Waking Up app. David White, Confessions, the True Meaning and Inspiration of Ordinary Words, something like that. I might put the link in the description if you follow me on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, and folks, be well and use your judgment in the way of discernment, linked to like a feeling in the body, really. Let your body's experience, the experience of things in your body, let it sort of guide you and let it drive you toward excitement, instead of that sort of judgment as death, right? Judgment is not death. It's just discernment. It's feedback. It's improvement. It's assessment. And you are ultimately the judge. Only you can judge your own actions and delivery and ways of operating. So I wish you all the best, friends. And this is michaeljohnson.tv. It was a pleasure to stream with you from the whiteboard today, a totally new way of doing it. And thanks for tuning in, and be well. Thank you. Bye-bye.